Wake up, wake up. It's not just the Friday before a weekend. It's a Friday before Memorial Day weekend. A lot of people making some travel plans. Take us with you wherever you go. Like and subscribe to Damon Bruce and Larry Krueger. It's Wake Up with Damon and Larry, and it's good to have you here on Friday, May 24th. Larry, good morning. I think
good morning.
Should start with the elephant in the room, because clearly the right side of you is sober today, but the left side of you is as high as a Bob Marley concert right now. What's going on with that eyeball, Larry Krueger?
Oh, man, I fell asleep with my contact lens in last night, and I think I gave myself a little bit of a something in the left eye. So now I'm one contact in, one contact out. I'm gonna have to go, get some medicine for this.
So I will be reading any and all super chats today and comments, because Larry is halfway a blind man. Seriously, he came on this morning before we clicked go live, and I said, "What do you got? Pink eye?" Being a father of a 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old, I'm on full-time pink eye monitoring duty over here, Larry. So I was worried that you got to touch the pink eye. Glad it's only a contact, and hopefully you get it all emergency washed, stationed out, and a little bit better. We got I don't want to say this is going to be an incredibly long show. It's not going to be an incredibly short show, but we're just kind of trying to put the sprinkles on top, the cherry on top of what's been, I think, a good week for the 49ers for the most part, Larry. I'm going with an awful lot of what's good just through, your reports and what Dave Lombardi's been saying going on down at training camp, and some other, I'm always reading, Matt Barrows and Tim Kawakami and Cam Inman. And it seems like the general consensus is that, the group of critics who go down to look at what the 49ers are doing and want to write what they like and what they don't like, there's not a lot of what they don't like going on around there, which means everybody's looking at this and it's sort of making sense in its early inception here. The rookies are taken to the field well. OTAs have gone well. Nobody has looked incredibly out of shape or behind the pace that the team wants to work at early on in the year here. And there's been no stupid injuries. And look, stupid injuries happen all the time on a football field. And the fact that there haven't been any, good week for the 49ers. Would you agree?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's nothing, hugely negative that typically comes out of minicamp. It's always kind of optimistic.
Right.
We haven't seen Drake Jackson on the field. We haven't seen Talanoa Hufanga on the field. We didn't see Ayuk. We didn't see Jennings. There was no Christian McCaffrey. Kittle was held out. So it's really hard to say. Like what they really look like. There's some bright spots. I think Malik Mustafa has been a bright spot. Garendo looks pretty explosive. Pearsall's obviously a good route runner. We didn't see Cowing at the one practice that I was at, but supposedly he's been out there, and Purdy had good things to say about him. So, yeah, overall, nobody went down with any kind of crushing injury, but that would be rare. I mean, if you lose somebody in minicamp, that's a really bad sign. And yet, as far as exactly how the team's looking, Brendel's got knee tendonitis, so he's not practicing at center, which gives some of the younger offensive linemen some go. And obviously no Jennings and no Ayuk, give some of the younger receivers some extra reps. So, yeah, I think they're going through the paces. It's just been a couple days, but so far so good. They like what they see.
I would absolutely have Christian McCaffrey in the small group of guys that I'm not worried about a single thing that they do. I mean, if they don't do anything but just show up for game day, I think you got a pretty good player right there. Christian McCaffrey is, a worker bee. We see how hard he works at training camp. He's not there right now for voluntary OTAs. Is there a little something to that when we were talking about, what can we go over today? You mentioned there's a little something buzzing around McCaffrey's absence, and what is that?
Well, Bobby T was at, it's funny, we had a chance to talk to the coaches, which is always one of the better days. And that was on Wednesday. And Bobby T was asked about McCaffrey, and he's like, I don't want to get into it. That's the business side of the thing, and I don't comment on that. Well, it's like, by saying that, he kind of alerted people. It was voluntary. So, and McCaffrey's getting married in a few weeks or whatever. And so a lot of people just thought, well, he's sitting it out for no reason at all, or just because he's got other things going on. And then Bobby T says that, and it makes it sound like maybe there's a contract issue there. And Shanahan was asked about it, and he's like, well, this is voluntary. So, we don't know if there's an issue or not. I guess we'll find out when it's mandatory if there's an issue. But yeah, I mean, that which is kind of a weird way to say it, because you've got to think he probably knows one way or another if there is an issue.
Well, I mean, he's the general manager. So, yeah, I mean, all due respect to John Lynch, there's not an element of 49er business that Kyle doesn't have his fingerprints all over at all times.
So, McCaffrey is the highest paid running back in the game. He's got no more guaranteed money on his deal. Purdy's about to get paid 50 times what he's making now. Jennings is going to get a new deal, it sounds like. Debo's got a deal. Ayuk wants a deal. So maybe Christian wants a new deal. Maybe he wants, maybe he's thinking, hey, you know what? I'm the best player on the team. I'm a huge percentage of the offense. Maybe take care of me. I don't know. Or maybe it could be nothing. Maybe he's upset that the Niners passed on his brother in the draft, or who knows? I mean, I really don't know what, if there's an issue, or if there is an issue, what the issue is, but it wouldn't be crazy for a guy who's, has the stature of McCaffrey to say, hey, take care of me. You're taking care of these other guys. How about you take care of your number one guy? And maybe they said, hey, we'll do it. I personally think the Niners ought to just let it sit. I mean, he's got a contract. He's the highest paid running back in the game, and maintain your flexibility as long as you can. But I mean, I'm not saying don't take care of Christian, but he's got a contract. He's the highest paid running back in the game. Show up and earn your money. And if you want more, we can talk about that too. But, I don't know. I'm not sure. Is it the presence of Garendo and Schrader? Is it the fact that they drafted 2 receivers early and they may pass more than they have in the past? I'm not sure if there's an issue, or if there is, what the issue is, but he wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like Bobby Turner might have, doth protest too much. I'm not looking at this through any lens of concern, and I don't think anyone really needs to. McCaffrey is one of those, just real deal guys. He doesn't need much of a practice week to show up and give you, 100 yards on the ground, 50 yards in the air, and 2 touchdowns. It's just kind of who he is. And because that's who he is, yeah, you want to take care of that guy. But the Niners do have, financial concerns coming up, and running backs being eminently the most replaceable position catches up, I think, with all running backs. So maybe there's a little concern there. He might just be looking at the news around Max Crosby. Did you see the Raiders are just giving Max Crosby a $6 million raise? They're not redoing his deal. They're not reworking his contract. They're just saying, hey, you're our best defensive player by a full country mile. So here's a raise. Here's some sprinkles on top. Maybe, there's nobody who wouldn't like more money in their next paycheck, no matter how much money is in your paycheck. So, maybe there is something there, but we're so far removed. I mean, it's Memorial Day. So you cannot get further away from a football season. And, things that happen around Memorial Day are so forgotten by week 1 that I'm not worried about it at all. Again, I think it's awesome that Nick Bosa is in there. It's awesome. Highest paid guy on the team is in the room. That's good that he's out there. It's very symbolic. It's no nonsense start to the year for that defensive line that it absolutely needs. I'm not worried about McCaffrey. I'm not.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's anything to worry about or not. I mean, I don't worry about other people's money, and I definitely don't worry about guys who are the highest paid at their position. But it's very possible that he wants to be taken care of with a new deal, and this could be the opening salvo. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
If he starts wiping the 49ers off his Instagram page, then we know that we have officially entered contract negotiations.
Well, we'll see, because I mean, you never know. He could be unhappy. He's entering his age 28 season, and he wants to, have a little security. I mean, if he gets hurt, there's no net, I mean, if he somehow blew out an Achilles, they don't have to give him another penny. I mean, his money is, all the guaranteed money on his contract's gone. So maybe he wants a little security. Maybe when they take care of Ayuk and create more cap room, maybe they'll do the same thing the Raiders did with Crosby and throw McCaffrey a few more bucks and maybe a few more guaranteed dollars. We'll see where it goes.
Other thing that happened this week is Brandon Staley. You got your first chance to sort of chop it up with him, Larry. He addressed his role a bit more, but didn't really define what his role is. And I think it's kind of an undefined role. It really is. The word overseer has got a lot of bad connotations attached to it, but it feels like he's sort of like a defensive overseer, a consigliere, a consultant, and a human sounding board for Nick Sorensen to run ideas through and Shanahan to even run ideas through. Impressions of Brandon Staley's first, hey, how are you with the media?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really define his role. It's still, they say it's going to evolve organically. I just think that, Shanahan wears so many hats in this organization. He's the play designer. He's the offensive coordinator. He's the buck stops with him on all three phases of the game. He's you just called him the general manager. I mean, he wears a lot of hats. So I've been one of those people that through the years has said, you know what, he needs to take a couple of those hats off and learn to, defer to others and to, share the balance, the workload. And I think that he doesn't want to, I think last year he was kind of the overseer of the defense and had to like jump on the headphones and be like, no, we're not going zero blitz here. Or, Steve, this is, you can tell there were a couple examples throughout the year where he seemed exasperated on the sideline or in the post game, he kind of threw after the Minnesota game, he threw Wilkes under the bus and said, Steve knows he screwed that up. I just think that he would like somebody to be a buffer between him and the defensive coordinator. And now you got a guy in Staley that can kind of be that guy.
Look, I'm all for discourse, but there's a guy in the chat right now, everyone's worst nightmare. CMC trash can emoji. I mean, come on. The offensive player of the year is a trash can emoji. Like that, you just disqualified yourself from any adult football conversation that could ever be had on this channel. I'm sorry. Like, what do you mean? Christian McCaffrey is a whole bunch of things. And he's as far away from the trash can emoji as professional athletes become. I mean, I don't understand. I guess just being an asshole is a good way to get attention. So I guess congratulations. You got your attention. Everyone's worst nightmare this morning. Is that what he's looking for? Larry,
no.
McCaffrey, trash or not trash? Which way?
Don't get tripped up by the chat. I mean, the number one rule of streaming is don't get tripped up by the chat.
But still, I mean, there's just, we're going to have a presence of actual football conversation, or we're just going to have someone who should be, blocked or something. Come on.
I don't know if that's block worthy.
But you're basically disqualifying yourself from any real conversation that could ever be had.
Fans are fans, and they get upset when things don't go in the favor of the team. And him holding out is definitely not helping the team. It may help him.
He's not holding out.
Well, I'm saying, but him not showing up. If this is the beginning of a holdout, then fans usually side with the team.
Yeah. Again, it's just bonkers. Again, we get a lot of, Purdy is trash, which is, I think, the perfect way to set up this next segment, because we got some evidence that suggests he might be not trash. What do you know? Saw this on Niners Nation, Larry. And again, like and subscribe. Welcome to Wake Up. Great to have you here. Andrew Pasquiani, is that his Pasquini? Is that his name? Either way, I wanted to credit the hard work that he put into this well-researched, interesting column about Brock Purdy.
What did AP write?
Purdy led the league with a 113 passer rating in 2023 on 444 pass attempts. Now, before that, only 10 other quarterbacks have ever finished a season with a higher passer rating than 113 on more than 400 pass attempts. Aaron Rodgers did it twice. Peyton Manning did it twice. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Tony Romo, who was at his zenith back in 2014. So that list contains a Hall of Famer, 4 future Hall of Famers, 2 fringe candidates, with Jackson trending now in the right direction, and Jim Nance's color commentator. Of that group, only Purdy, Brees, and Romo did not win MVPs in their year where their passer rating was 113 or better over 400 passing attempts in a season. So, Brock Purdy at the beginning of his career is keeping some really elite company. And if you just look at Purdy through the prism of last year only, there is mathematical evidence to back up he had one of the best quarterback seasons in football history. He really did. Brock Purdy was wildly efficient, surgically effective, and he had a monster year, which is why he finished top 5 in MVP conversations, and he deserved that. The column goes on, Larry. But what if we throw it all the way back to Purdy's rookie season? And he had a very good sophomore year as well there. Like, measuring the beginning of his career, how is Brock Purdy stacking up against history? Brock Purdy's played in 25 games, 21 starts. Over those 2 years, he has thrown 614 passes, 44 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He's got a 111.4 passer rating to start his career, 111.4. So how many quarterbacks have thrown for more than 600 passes with a rating higher than 110 over their first 25 career games? So we're talking about who's gotten off to the greatest start in the history of quarterbacking is basically what we're asking here. Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, end of list. And we all agree that Patrick Mahomes has nothing short of the single greatest beginning to a career any quarterback has ever had. That's not even up for debate. I'm not saying he's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time, but the greatest start to a quarterback's career, it's Patrick Mahomes, number 1 with a bullet.
Well, statistically, but if you go by record, I think it might be Roethlisberger. Didn't Roethlisberger go like 15-1 and lead? And didn't Tom Zach start off incredibly hot with the Bears?
Yeah, but I
mean, as far as wins and losses,
but they're not
anybody.
You're not stacking Lombardi trophies. Well, no. Roethlisberger did, get one. Yeah. But Mike Tomczak doesn't belong in any conversation about quarterbacking excellence. I don't care what his statistics ever said about him.
No, but you're talking specifically about hot starts. He got off to a hot start. Russell Wilson got off to a hot start. Roethlisberger got off to a hot start. I mean, there's been a few guys, but not very many.
But the amount of quarterbacks who've thrown for more than 600 passes with a higher rating than 110 in their first 25 career games, it's Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes. That's it. So, I mean, where is the argument again about what Brock Purdy isn't at that point, right?
No, I don't think anybody's making that argument anymore. Or at least nobody who's sensible is making an argument that, Purdy's anything but their absolute starter going forward and a very special player. I mean, I think anybody who's still arguing that he doesn't have arm strength or he doesn't have this or doesn't have that, those people are never going to be satisfied. I mean, the guy went to the Super Bowl and almost beat Mahomes. And really, if he gets a couple breaks, Greenlaw doesn't go out, who knows? Maybe he beats Mahomes in his second year. And we're such a bottom line oriented society. It's like, if you win, you're the king, but if you lose, you're not a prince. You're like, just
court
another
gesture.
Yeah. You're just nothing. So, we're so bottom line oriented, but I mean, the guy was a whisker away from, literally having the shut up card to every single person that's ever criticized him. And as far as I'm concerned, he still has it. And then still did incredible things. So he ran the table as a rookie.
Yeah. And then, there's always the element of, well, Brock is in an incredibly advantageous situation, even though.
But so's everybody. I mean, so's everybody as far as Mahomes has great weapons. Burrow's got great weapons.
Right. But they're never really scored quite against them the way that Brock Purdy gets docked points for playing on the 49ers. And this is where the column ends. It says Purdy will continue to be dock points for what's around him. But look around, Kurt Warner in his early days. Nobody seems to question how good the 2-time MVP had it with Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk around him. So why do we discredit Purdy for having Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey around him? And he's put up better number than Warner's at this point in his career. Nobody ever looks at Patrick Mahomes and said, well, oh my God, he got to come into the league with Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. It's just, there's a conversation that gets tacked to Purdy that other quarterbacks seemed not to have attached to them.
Well, and it's this, what are we arguing today? It's like, if you want to talk about Shanahan, there's all kinds of people like, Shanahan's not this, Shanahan's not that. But if you want to talk about Purdy, then it's like, hey, man, he gets to play for Shanahan. So what is it? Is Shanahan just this awesome advantage, or this, or is he this huge disadvantage? People argue this both ways. It's like we're not going to give Kyle full love despite his overwhelming success because he hasn't won the big one. And then we're not going to give Purdy full love because he plays for Kyle, and Kyle's so great that he overshadows, everything that Purdy does. And it's, you know what I mean? So it's just like, if Kyle's not good enough because he hasn't won the big one, and Purdy's not good enough because he's got this advantage that he plays for Kyle, aren't we arguing that Kyle's both incredibly valuable and an asset and a liability? I mean, it's just like, come on, is he an asset or is he a liability? And he's obviously an asset, but let's just be consistent. Nobody's arguing he's an asset when there's all kinds of crazy Niner people out there going, he sucks, despite the fact that, he's probably one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. And now there's a bunch of people saying Purdy may not be it. He may not be the guy, this and that. And the main argument is, well, he plays for Shanahan. So,
right.
What is it?
Right. But your argument yesterday was that Kyle Shanahan's not good enough to win anything. So
Kyle Shanahan's not good enough, except when you're talking about Brock Purdy, and then he's a major asset.
Right. And look, I'm not trying to pick on everyone's worst nightmare. Who I will say this, everyone's worst nightmare. You're in here all the time. You do watch, and thank you very much. He says, nobody cares about how good you did in the regular season. Christian McCaffrey in the playoffs, he underperformed. And look, he fumbled in the Super Bowl. I'll give you that. If your criticism is he fumbled on the critical opening drive of the Super Bowl, who could possibly refute that? Because it happened. That's not an opinion. That happened. And that wasn't good. That's probably where the Super Bowl was lost right there. If you want to go all the way back to the beginning of the game, where did the Niners really
go? The guy did a lot of good things too. I mean, Mahomes threw an interception to Jair Brown in the Super Bowl. Is he terrible?
Well, and he says, nobody cares about how good you did in the regular season. No, this isn't the NBA. As a matter of fact, football is the last regular season that matters. We can't do this whole football doesn't matter until the playoffs shit. No. The fact that 38 million people tune into a Thursday night game in week 7 means that you're wrong. Football's regular season is the last regular season that matters. Well, all I want is Lombardi trophy. Well, aren't you a special little flower in the garden? Everyone wants one of those. Everyone wants one of those. And I will say this, Larry, to kind of wrap up what I got on the Niners today. There is no, and I'm talking no team in the NFL that even has a relatively similar amount of pressure to win it all this year than the 49ers. Not one. The Kansas City Chiefs are 1,000% playing with house money here. They're trying to do something that's never been done in the history of football. So you don't have a lot of pressure to do something that is literally unprecedented. They'd love to do it, but the pressure is fine. No one's getting fired if the Kansas City Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl this year. And probably nobody's getting fired on the Niners if they don't win the Super Bowl this year. So pressure is sort of, what kind of pressure are you really talking about here? The pressure to get it done. It's on the Niners more than anyone else. Maybe out of the AFC, you could attach a level of got to have it now to the New York Jets only because where Aaron Rodgers is in his career. But it's certainly not
Baltimore. Baltimore was the number 1 seed in the playoffs last year. They lost at home to Kansas City. I mean, there's probably some pressure on them, but
sure.
I mean, the reality is that these guys put enough. They don't need the outside pressure. There's enough. There's enough drive. There's enough determination. They know that they've fallen short. They know they want to get it done, and there's a big difference between winning and getting it done, even if it's only one championship versus not getting it done. So yeah, if you're going to be remembered as a special team in any way, you gotta get that ultimate prize. It's just kind of the way it is. So yeah, I don't sense any great pressure around the Niners, but they know that that they haven't reached their ultimate goal, and they want to reach it. But I don't think it's any different than any other year as far as, these guys show up every year trying to climb to the top of the mountain. And then, it's like you get close and then that thing rolls all the way back down and you got to reset and try it again. And that's just where they're at. Only one team can win. Mahomes and Reed are the it quarterback and it head coach of this era. And they've gotten the upper hand in 2 Super Bowls against the 49ers and 3 overall. So, they have what the Niners want. And somehow 49ers are going to have to build up a good enough team to get in the winner's circle on Super Bowl Sunday and get it done. Hasn't happened yet, but I don't, they want to have it happen, whether it's people putting pressure on them or not. I mean, this is when you play for the 49ers, when you coach and you're the general manager for the 49ers, not every team. I mean, the Detroit Lions have been horrible forever. They just want to make the playoffs and make a nice run at it. The 49ers, whether they like it or not, the standard has been set. They have the 5 Lombardi trophies. When you have 5 Lombardi trophies and your team's had that kind of success, you're always going to judge yourself against winning the Lombardi trophy, and nothing short of that is ever going to be enough.
Come on, D's nuts.
Speaking of the Detroit Lions, Larry, did you see what Dan Campbell said? Like, someone asked him, is it a Super Bowl or bust year? And he said, no, because I don't know what bust is. What do you mean? So we don't win the Super Bowl? What's the bust? Who's in trouble? What does bust mean? I don't understand what bust means in Super Bowl or bust. I kind of love that from Dan Campbell. And he knows, that, hey, Super Bowl or bust, it's a great headline. It's a great T-shirt. It's a great battle cry. But what does it really mean? And I don't blame Dan Campbell for turning around and being like, you know what? I blew the NFC title game. I think we know that.
Did he say that?
No, I don't think he said that specifically, but he knows that you get very few opportunities to do something special. And when your chance is in front of you, you either take it or you blow it. And I think the Lions feel that they blew that game at Levi Stadium, and they should. They did blew that game at Levi Stadium a little bit. But Dan Campbell,
well, they just went with it with terrible game management. I mean, come on. When you're up big, you take the points, and he didn't. He went for the jugular. He's the sensei in the Karate Kid saying sweep the leg. It's like, okay, great. You swept the leg and you missed, and then you lost. If all you needed was a single, and you took a home run swing, and you struck out.
You did not put him in the body bag.
Yeah, I mean, if they had just gotten a couple singles, the equivalents of singles, they would have won the game. Instead, we're going for it because I'm Dan Campbell, and you got to be smart. Toughness is great, but it's not just about toughness. It's about smarts. And he showed toughness. He didn't show smarts.
He did this is the way we play. This is the tone we set. Look, you set tone in the regular season. Postseason's just about results.
Do what you got to do to get to the winner's circle.
That's it. Yeah. There's no tone to be set anymore. The tone you were trying to set is we're going to be in the postseason. You did it. Now you need points. You don't need any more tone.
It's like John Harbaugh on Christmas night. They got up early. It's funny. I was talking to Clay Kubiak about the Baltimore game. I'm like, what happened in that Baltimore game? And he's like, well, they got a couple turnovers over us early, and then they went into a super conservative, two-shell kind of look and kind of forced everything to stay in front, didn't give us any big plays, and made us methodically drive the ball down the field, and we kept turning it over. And if you throw 5 interceptions in a game, you're going to lose. I mean, the Niners had more yards, but they couldn't. Once Baltimore got a lead, they decided, you know what, you're not going to get any big plays on us. We're going to play super conservative and make you drive the ball and show patience and use the clock. And it worked, and it worked. So, but I mean, John Harbaugh in the second half of that game played conservatively, took the points when he could, punted when he could. Didn't make any didn't take any real risks, and they won the game. So it's like he's a much better game manager than Dan Campbell is at this point. experience.
Comes with
Lack of
experience. Exactly.
Yeah.
Comes with experience. So, again, that kind of brings us back to Brandon Staley. Maybe, cast as a head coach, it was an overcast for him, and he didn't quite fit that role, but coming back to be defensive guru, wizardry, let me take my experience and try to share it with Nick Sorensen, who has experience with the 49ers, but being a defensive coordinator, he doesn't have that. I've worked with Vic Fangio. I've worked with, this is what you're saying, if you're Brandon Staley, and the reason why he's in the room. And look, it's obvious Kyle really likes him. I don't know where that, relationship really developed for them, but Kyle likes Brandon Staley more than probably anybody else in the NFL right now.
Well, they're working together. We'll see. I mean, maybe they need each other. Staley, we'll see. I mean, Staley, is he a great defensive coach? Is he, his defense gave up, 60 some odd points to the Raiders or whatever it was.
It was bad.
That's not good. And they didn't get it done with an awful lot of talent, so he's kind of trying to reinvent himself. 49ers are looking for, somebody who can help their defense out and help them climb to the top of the mountain. I mean, I did like what Staley said about Brock Purdy. He's like, this guy, he's such a grinder and such a gamer that it kind of, the way he prepares rubs off on the rest of the team. And I thought that was a good observation.
Well, and look, maybe that's the real, the shame of Christian McCaffrey not being out there to set an example, especially for a young running back room with two rookies in it now. Watching McCaffrey at training camp, it was kind of like watching Steph Curry wrap up an NBA practice. Like if there were ever a guy who doesn't need to now that practice is over, get 300 threes up, it's that guy. But there he is, and that's what he's doing, and that's what makes that guy that guy. You wouldn't think Christian McCaffrey needed to dot every single run with a 50-yard downfield wind sprint, but he does. All of them. I mean, that guy...
Very Jerry Rice-esque.
Yeah, he works harder in shells than most guys do in full pads going through tackles. And that's example setting. That's leadership. That's quiet leadership. This is how we do it when you want to be as good as me. So that's the shame of him not being there. And I really hope there's no acrimony about who's getting paid what. I understand he wants the security. And I think it would be in the Niners' interest to find it for him. I don't want this to be Christian McCaffrey's last year with the Niners. He was outstanding last year. I mean, I'll tell you right now, Christian McCaffrey's played for the 49ers for like 5 minutes. He's one of the greatest 49ers of all time already.
The thing about it, though, is I didn't love the usage last year from the standpoint of they overused him. I mean, they gave him a ton of touches. They didn't use their backup running backs. And how many years? I mean, you're shortening a guy's career when you give him that many touches. And how much? And when I say they gave him, I mean, he demanded it. He wanted to be out there. But this year, they got to find a way to use their other backs. They got to get, they got to the Super Bowl and they had Dre Greenlaw at whatever percent he was, and they had McCaffrey at less than 100%. If they are going to get it done on Super Bowl Sunday, they're going to have to make sure that when they get there and they're going up against the Chiefs or Ravens or who knows, maybe the Texans, that they've got a healthy star, in Christian McCaffrey. And that means using Mason and maybe Garendo and Schrader and Mitchell and other guys, and dictating to Christian, hey, you know what? We're up 17. It's early fourth quarter, but we're up 17. Sit down. We're going to go with Mason the rest of the day.
Hey, maybe they
need to do that. They need to dictate to him. I think they've let him dictate to them.
Well, I think they wanted him to chase that consecutive games with a touchdown pursuit that he was on for a while there, and
no more individual records. It's all about the team.
What was the one game where they were just like blatantly trying to get him a touchdown late in the game and he was getting shut down at the line? That like those are snaps and carries that he should have never even gotten in a decided game, but they were trying to get him the record. I
get it. They're trying to make him happy and give him something. And, but I mean, they did that the wrong way. I mean, it's how hard is it to understand that if the defense knows you're going to one player, they're just going to crush that player. And he just kept taking big hit after big hit.
Right.
They wanted to get
11 after McCaffrey.
They wanted to get that done. They should have gotten that done earlier in the game and done it more subtly. Instead, they're trying to force feed it at the end of the game, and he just took hit after hit after hit. If one of those hits had resulted in an injury that made him out for the year, Shanahan would have been hell to pay, and there would have been people second guessing it, and they would have been right to second guess it. So I didn't love that. I thought that was one of the weaker moments for Shanahan on the year.
Well, and you talk about what did Dan Campbell learn last year that he's going to do differently and take into this year. We'll see. The one thing that I really hope that Kyle, took notes on last year and changes the way he goes about coaching this team a bit this year is to lean on the depth. And this is something that you and I have talked about. There were linebacker snaps that should have gone to someone other than an overworked, off-injured Dre Greenlaw, but Greenlaw was out there too much, and he ended up popping his Achilles, jumping in excitement in a Super Bowl. Does that Achilles pop if it wasn't as overworked all season long? The injuries, if they were easy to predict and prevent, there'd never be an injury. So you can't say that is directly correlated, but workload matters. And I think that, football is the last place in sports where you don't hear about load management. But I think we're about to hear more about it. We really are.
I mean, these guys are warriors, but so what? I mean, protect them from themselves. Yeah, there's something admirable about the fact that every game you say to Dre Greenlaw, "You ready to roll?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to roll." But sometimes you got to say to him, "Hey, Dre, you're not ready to roll, and we're going with Graham, or we're going with Winters, or we're going with Campbell, or we're going with somebody else." But there's so much pressure to win. And, and the players want to play, and a lot of them have incentives built into how much they play. And you don't want to take money out of a guy's pocket. And if a guy says he wants to play, it's hard to tell him no, but that's your job to make sure that he's ready to go when the Super Bowl is decided in February. And the old coach used to say it's the way you play the day you play. So be ready to, you could be awesome and have this great regular season, but if you're not ready to play on Super Bowl Sunday, they don't throw the parade, and you don't get the ring, and you don't get the championship. And so far, the Niners haven't been the better team on Super Bowl Sunday, and they've got to make sure that not only do they get there, but they get there and that they're the best team on that day, and it hasn't happened yet. And a lot goes into it. Sometimes you got to take some players and say, you know what? No, you're not playing today.
It's the way you play on the day you play. That's some good old coaches. There could be a collection of T-shirts that we should crank out and just with old coach sayings on it. That's great.
You can't make the club in the tub.
I like that. Again, I had an old man who was around my high school football team. There was an old man who was not really a coach of my high school football team. He was the Brandon Staley of my high school. He was like the consigliere. He was the old man who was at practice telling everyone what they should do. And the only bit of advice he would give to the team every single time he addressed the team or was allowed to, he would wrap it up with just by saying, "Boys, remember, football's all about blocking and tackling. Everything else just sells tickets. Quarterback play, I don't care. Running backs,
wide. Well, I was in the Canadian League, and the defensive coordinator wanted to, rip one of the players. He's like, you know what? Let me tell you something. I'm special. Larry's special. The rest of you slap dicks, you're jags. You're just a guy. Just a guy. As far as I'm concerned, you're jags. Just a guy."
It's a good way to get your players' attention.
Yeah.
You're a completely replaceable cog in this machine. Get out of here. But no, hey, sometimes you got to be tough on players. Again, this goes back to do you think NBA players could play in the NBA or play in the NFL? Athletically, yes. Mentally, maybe not. Because you got NBA players who literally haven't had a coach dare even raise their voices to them since like the AAU high school circuit. In football, The star of your team gets his ass ripped 4 or 5 times in a practice every day. So there's an element of that. Like, I don't know if you guys could
Well, I
handle
mean, in the NFL, guys rip your helmet around and you're looking through your ear hole. In the NBA, if somebody glances, a fingertip off LeBron's cheek, he hurls himself backwards, grabs his face like he's been shot. Oh, oh, oh my, oh. And then it's like you see the highlight and it's like,
yeah, right.
Somebody's like, oh.
Unless he's coming up, Larry, with an eye that looks like yours this morning,
yeah,
he's faking.
LeBron. I did love the Draymond Green on the John Wall podcast talking about LeBron stepping over him in the finals. I thought that was, great.
When he
basically said, "Get off me," when LeBron tried to step over Draymond and disrespect him like that. Draymond's still bitter about it. I think I am too, as a Warrior fan.
It was not look at it this way. In all of the on-court designed to be violent acts that Draymond has participated in, that really wasn't one of them. He wasn't trying to nut tap LeBron as much as he was just trying to say, I'm not going to be the Ty Lue to your Allen Iverson. You don't do something on me and then step over me.
Right.
When Allen Iverson stepped over Ty Lue, he made that a full-on no-no in basketball history going forward. Like, you're never allowed to do that again. Allen Iverson.
Just the universal, you don't do it. I don't care if we're playing hoops in the Panhandle and you block my shot, I go to the ground. There's a lot of room on the court. You can step any way you want. If you step over a man, you're disrespecting him. And LeBron disrespected Draymond intentionally and incited Draymond to kind of throw his hands up. He never actually made contact with LeBron. He got suspended for it. And instead of winning the finals MVP and being a hero, LeBron won the finals and the finals MVP, and he was the hero. So,
by the way, have you heard? Not to keep it on the Warriors too long here, but let me promote a couple friends of ours. The Light Years guys just had me on their podcast and on YouTube. So I was on with Sam and Andy talking some Warriors. So that's out there in the YouTube universe for you to find today. I think they just released it. So I know you like those guys too. Had a great conversation with them. The whole Joe Lacob actually told Draymond he could see him coaching the team one day. What? In the history of a personality,
that doesn't surprise me at all.
In the history of personalities to be head coaches, Draymond is as far away removed from a personality you'd want in a head coach. The whole point of being a head coach is you keep your calm while everyone else around you loses theirs. And
Bill Laimbeer coached in the NBA or in the WNBA.
WNBA, right? Much different. Much different.
Well, I mean, I can find you volatile coaches if you want. I mean, Michael Malone seems pretty volatile.
Right. But look, I'm going to say this.
Draymond Green's a basketball genius, and I think there's no doubt he's going to be a coach. Heck, I mean,
broadcaster. He does not have a coach's mentality. He has no patience.
Well, I don't know if I'd want to be a coach. I think I'd rather be a general manager, but he definitely could be an executive in the NBA because he's, it's a player who's going to coach former players. He's a former player and a damn smart one at that. So yeah, he's going to have to rein it in because he loses his mind as a player from time to time. You can't lose your mind as a coach. But as far as motivation, man, who's going to be a better motivator than that guy? As far as intensity, who's going to bring more intensity than him? As far as basketball intellect, he's one of the smartest players I've seen.
Right.
He reminds me of Larry Bird in a lot of ways.
Kerr is who you've had as your coach, and then the next guy up, Draymond. Steve's
got a terrible temper too. He'll motherfuck you and tell you you're wrong. And Draymond, I think Draymond would be an outstanding coach. But I if I was him, I wouldn't want to be a coach. I'd rather be a GM.
Not at all.
He's a GM.
Not mentally.
If you're a coach, you're standing on a curb waiting for a bus to take a plane in the middle of the night. If you're the general manager, you're at home. I think the GM job is a far better job. That's the one I'd want.
Oh yeah. It's the less wear and tear on just your human nature, because a GM doesn't have to make every road trip.
Yeah, you don't want to take that the kind of travel that NBA teams travel. I mean, it's 5-star travel, but it's still a ton of it.
It's a lot. But yeah, it's good travel. It really is. So there you go. I didn't mean to veer into Draymond, but there we went. And anything else from the NFL, Larry, that you feel we got to get out before Memorial Day, and people are watching this video all Memorial Day weekend long, and what else about the NFL, the 49ers voluntary OTAs do they need to know about that I have not asked you about? What do you got to get off your chest, Larry Krueger?
Well, I think it's interesting. The coaches' conversations this week were really, really good. And there were several things that I thought were interesting. One, Brandon Staley said that he felt like Brock Purdy, the way he practices and the gamer and the grit and the attention to detail in his preparation. He says he thinks it's a example for the rest of the team. Brian Greasy, who discovered Brock Purdy in a lot of ways, is also discovered this kid, Tanner Mordecai. I talked to him and Clay Kubiak about Mordecai, and they both really very, very glowing in their praise of the Niners' fourth string quarterback. So I would say the
similarity that he's got with Brock is just lots of college snaps. He is.
And really, like, what they both said was, man, this guy is a competitor. Okay, so that's the number one. You got to be a great competitor. And then, I think Kubiak said he's really, really smart. He's really smart. So that's the other trait that you really need. You need to be smart. You need to be competitive. But after talking to Kubiak and talking to Greasy, I'm even more confident that Mordecai's something and not nothing, and is going to show well for himself this summer in training camp. So that's one thing that kind of stood out. Mason Pline, who I'm a big fan of, the undrafted college tight end out of
Furman's
talking to Brian Fleury. And he's like, the kid's got a lot to learn, and his head's swimming and this and that, and he's learning a lot.
Why don't you tell everyone who Brian Fleury is?
He's the tight end coach.
Okay.
And he's like, Pline, he's like, I said to Fleury, I said, I was watching a blog on the draft or listening to a podcast, and somebody threw him up there and said, hey, check out Mason Pline from Furman. And so I Googled him, and I found, I YouTubed him, and I found all these basketball highlights. And then once I saw he was a basketball player, I was like, wow, this guy's athletic as hell. Then I realized he's 6'8". I thought he was like 6'4". He's not, more like 6'8". Then I found out he had 10.5-inch hands. Then I found out he was an mechanical engineering major. And I'm like saying to Fleury, I'm like, that right there checks all the boxes. I mean, that's a great prospect on paper. And he's like, I saw all the same things you saw when I was looking at him before the draft. And I'm intrigued by the same things that you're intrigued by. And all I'll say with Pline is he's improving at an incredibly fast rate, which makes sense because when you're really, really, really smart and you can digest everything, that's what we saw last year with Jack Coletto. I mean, he was really progressing. I mean, he really played well in the preseason. He really played well in training camp. Now, he was a borderline NFL athlete. He got caught up in a numbers game on the practice squad and is now in Pittsburgh. But really, really smart guys can digest the massive NFL playbook at a much faster rate. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Pline is improving at this rapid rate because he's big and athletic and smart. So that is a guy to look for this summer is Mason Pline. And
There's
then
a guy in the chat named Eggs who says Larry is praying that Pline balls out. Hey, you should be too if you're a 49er fan, because the least amount of depth they have at any position is tight end. Far and away.
And I'm pretty confident that he is going to play good ball. And then as far as other guys on the team, I mean, Malik Mustafa is, I think if you're one to say who's the guy who's really shining, It's Malik Mustafa, who's going to have a great chance to start at safety with the injury to Afonga. So, and then Jair Brown, of all the young players that are ascending, and there's 10 to 12 to 15 young players who, the arrow's pointing up, but no arrow is pointing up at a higher angle than Jair Brown. Jair Brown is, you can just tell, he is just, he was really good last year.
Yeah.
But he is going to be the biggest improvements year 1 to year 2. And I would expect him to be one of the Niners' better players going forward.
So the Mustafa question that I wanted to ask you is, he's obviously getting reps at safety. Could he play nickel? Could he actually be a hybrid of like outside linebacker level safety? Could he get reps at linebacker, I guess is the question I'm kind of asking.
Well, that's not nickel. The nickel is a DB role. It's like a corner role.
I know, but it just.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's thick and he's instinctive and he's fast and he likes to hit. I think he's a safety. The question is he a strong safety in the box up on the line of scrimmage against the run, and he struggles on the back end with coverage, or is he good enough on the back end? He looks like a thumper. He looks like Jamal Adams. He looks like
barrel chest on him, man. He's thick.
He's thick. He definitely doesn't look like a corner. He looks like a safety / linebacker. But there's also coverage ability there. So, and he played a Panther role in college, which is, kept him on all 3 levels of the defense. Sometimes he's blitzing, sometimes he's on the back end in coverage, and everything in between.
Well, there you go. That's the word I'm looking for. I'll go with Panther too. Can he be the Niners' Panther?
Well, he's definitely a player. I mean, I'll say that. He's smart, he's intense, he's physical. The question is, can he cover the deep middle in a cover 3 in a zone? Because the Niners play a lot of zone and they play a lot of cover 3. And Fonga, I think, is better in the box. And I think Jair might be better in the box. So we'll see. But he definitely is, he's a terrific safety prospect. And so far, they love his work ethic. They love everything about him. I mean, he's an alpha. He's a leader. He's smart. He's a good football player. That was a terrific pick. That kid probably should have gone in the 2nd round, and instead he went in the 4th.
Bring up that starred super chat that you got, Larry. Let's get to it right here and now while we're talking NFL. I'm sure that's about the NFL because I got some other stuff to get into here. This is from Oscar Alfaro. Thank you very much, Oscar, for watching, for being generous this morning. Does York ever come to a fork in the road where Purdy surpasses the need for Shanahan if Shanahan continues to falter, i.e. Del Harris with the Lakers? I mean, you could go maybe i.e. Steph Curry with Mark Jackson there too, I guess. Here's the thing. I mean,
of course it could happen, but they're nowhere close to that right now.
Right. And rarely do you get the quarterback that everyone now agrees is just phenomenal and look to take his head coach from him because you believe there's some coaching blind spot that prevents you from winning the ultimate prize. It's not as, one man in, one man out as that question kind of sounds.
Jed, you got to remember, Jed had Tom Sula. He had Chip Kelly. Those scars, I mean, and he had to pay, roughly $20 million to pay off those coaches and their assistants.
Yeah.
So there's pain involved there. Now, granted, there's so much revenue in the NFL that they could do that, and they did do that. But those are fresh wounds. So, he liked Harbaugh and the results, but you know what? He couldn't get along with Harbaugh and nobody else could either. So then it's like, I want a coach that I can get along with and who gets along with his general manager. Now he's got a coach that he likes. He's got a general manager that he likes. They're winning games. They're making money. Right. The ultimate prize is the Lombardi. But there's also, it's also about making money, and the Niners, go to the playoffs and they make a lot of money. So So I think he's appeased by the money, but he's not satisfied. But Shanahan ain't going anywhere. Shanahan is literally nearly a made man with New York.
I mean, that's the thing. There's one incomplete. You look at all the boxes that a head coach can possibly check. Shanahan has checked all of them, every single one of them, except the most important box that comes at the end of the year. But everything else, and that end of the year is never guaranteed. So if you check every fucking box on the way up to the never guaranteed box, and you do it year in, year out with different quarterbacks, with moving pieces, with losing assistant coaches to head coaching opportunities almost by the year, it's impossible for anyone who understands football, which, I'm going to give Jed the credit of understanding football, certainly understanding the football business, that you don't walk away from coaches that do that ever.
Well, I think the great comparison with Shanahan is Andy Reid. And Shanahan's now, I think this is year 7 or year 6.
Who, for Shanahan?
Yeah, 7.
He's going into year 8.
Is it year 8?
It's year 8 already for Shanahan. This will be year 8.
So if you said to me,
I'm going to triple check that.
What do you think, Shanahan? What kind of rope? Because nobody's got an endless rope. What kind of rope does Shanahan have? I would say he's got the Reid rope. Reid was in Philly for 13 years. I think Shanahan has got at least 5 more years in San Francisco. If it doesn't happen inside of 5 years, there's a chance when it gets to year 13 that they also will part ways. But I would say he's got 5 years. He's got 5 years to get a ring. If he gets the ring, then he can stay for as long as he wants. If he doesn't get the ring in 5 years, maybe they go in a different direction. But even so, was it smart for Philly to move off of Andy Reid? I don't think so. I mean, they got a Super Bowl with Peterson, but he's not the coach anymore. Now they've got, the guy who mugs for the cameras, and Andy Reid's won 3 Super Bowls in Kansas City. So I don't know. I would say he's probably going to go kind of like Reid's thing went, where he's probably got a good 5 years left. And if he doesn't get it done after that point, they could move on. I don't know if I could even see Jed doing that, but there's got to be an end to it at some point if you're not getting it done. So I would say, he's probably Reid got 13 years in Philly. I bet you Shanahan gets at least that much in San Francisco, maybe more like 15 years. He might have 7 years left.
Yeah, no,
I think he's not on the hot seat. Let's just say that.
I think Kyle Shanahan will end up as the 49ers all-time games coached, and probably games won coached as well. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, I really hope he gets a Super Bowl, because he's going to be around longer than Bill Walsh was, longer than Seifert was. And those are the 2 best coaches that this franchise has ever had. So, and look, it's an entirely different beast that he's coaching through than what Walsh and Seifert had to go through. The league is just much different than the way it used to be. And there are no, we play like this, you play like that. The league has been so homogenized that everyone's kind of got the same style right now. There is no, we're a West Coast offense team. We're sort of a run and gun team. We do this differently. And everyone is pretty much the same team week in, week out, with the same level of talent. And who's got the better game plan? Who can make the play on the one big game-changing play in this game? It's why the NFL is so maddening to bet.
Well, I mean, I think it's very similar, to be honest. I mean, yeah, the rules have changed and the cap and all that. But, I mean, look at the era that Walsh and Seifert coached in, and look at the teams. The Niners won in 81, right? They were great. Redskins, I think, won it in 82. Or maybe was it 82 and 83, I think. 84, Niners won it. 85, Bears, one of the greatest teams of all time. Maybe the greatest defense ever. 86, Giants, they're right there too. 87, Skins were awesome, incredible. 88, Niners won it all. 89, Niners won it all. 90, Niners should have won it all. Instead, they lost to the New York Giants, another really, really good team, Hall of Fame coach, LT. Then you're talking about Green Bay, I believe, in 91 with Favre.
Right.
And then you got the beginning of the Cowboy dynasty, and they were dominating 92, 93. Niners won in 94. Cowboys won in 95. So, I mean, it's just they played in an era where they played with the 85 Bears, the 86 Giants, the 87 Skins, and then the 91 Pack and the 92, 93, 95 Cowboys. I mean, you could make an argument that those were true titans, some of the greatest teams in the history of football.
Well, look at it this way.
That was an incredibly high bar to have to climb. And now the bar is also very high because now you got the cap and you got to manage the finances. You can't have 4 nose guards. And, you've got they're different challenges. But, I mean, the challenges that Walsh and Seifert had in the 80s because of the dominance of the teams.
Well, the NFC was just a monster over the AFC to the point where the AFC would send
those are historical teams, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
the AFC was all their very best, and that Bills team that lost 4 Super Bowls was awesome. Yeah, awesome. I mean, had they run into any other era of NFC dominance, they're winning 1 or 2 of those Super Bowls. But they
would have beat the Niners.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. If the Niners got to the 3-peat, they would have lost that game to the Buffalo Bills. Why? Because that was Steve Young, and nothing against Steve Young, but that was a young Steve Young who had never played in that kind of a game before. So to think that the Niners were just going to rampage that Buffalo team, that was an incredible performance by the New York Giants, one of the greatest game plans ever. And they got it done against Buffalo. And maybe the Niners would have gotten it done, but Buffalo, I think, was better, especially with Montana out. Now, if you had Montana, now maybe the Niners beat Buffalo. They probably do beat Buffalo. But Steve Young's first playoff game, I think he had 5 turnovers, like 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles against the Washington Redskins. So, this idea that, Roger Craig blew the Super Bowl. No, he didn't. He fumbled in the NFC Championship game. If they had gone on to the Super Bowl, it would have been the Buffalo Bills against Steve Young and in the Niners, and nothing against Steve, but Steve eventually was ready to win the Super Bowl, but it wasn't at that point.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't. 1990 he was not the same guy that he was by 1994. He was far better in 94, 95, 96, 97 than he was 90, 91, 92. Though he did win the MVP in, I think, 92. So he was great, but there's a difference in playoff. He struggled with some of those playoff battles early on and then started playing mistake-free football. And by 94, he was an instructional video on how to play.
Well, and look, good, smart, hardworking players improve. And Steve Young was all of those things at once. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever heard.
And they went from Holmgren, who taught him well. And then, of course, Holmgren moved on to Green Bay and Coach Favre, and then Shanahan came in. Mike Shanahan came in, and Mike Shanahan was the perfect offensive coordinator for Steve. They had incredible weapons, and the 94 Niners are one of the most talented teams in the history of the NFL.
I was watching one of those lead up to the Super Bowl documentaries and listening to Mike Shanahan and Steve Young talk about that game plan the night before. They're going over. They don't even have the tape on anymore. They don't even need the tape on to have the tape on against San Diego at this point. And they're just like, okay, first down is this, second down is that, third down, boom, will be a touchdown. And they had it. They had it all connected. They knew where their dots were going to move. They knew where the X's and O's of San Diego would be moved in those first 2 plays. And that third play is going to be a touchdown. And sure enough, they superimpose the night before conversation over the actual game footage in this documentary that I saw. And these 2 guys saw the future of this game before it even kicked off. They were so smart together. They were so
funny too, because the Chargers had a safety named Stanley Richard, and they called him the sheriff, and it was like nobody. There were people that week where 49ers are not going to have any success in the middle of the field.
He's the difference maker.
They're not going to have those big pass plays against the sheriff, and it's like Rice down the middle. First play of the game,
new
sheriff, go where your deputies, it's like, that 49er team just thoroughly outclassed that Charger team.
Yeah.
Who had Junior Seau and Natron Means and Stan Humphries and some really good players. But
yeah, no slouch. That team was not a slouch. Again, there's no such thing as
they weren't the Niners. The NFC was the king.
Yeah. Just to, I think, move on here and illuminate how dramatically of a changing football ecosystem that we're now just all living in. Larry, we spent quite a bit of time on Wednesday talking about, how the NFL establishing itself a minor league would be good for business. And maybe that's how you get a footprint over in Europe. And we talked about that. And, when we both conceded that right now the football's minor leagues are college football. So anything that happens in college football eventually absolutely does matter to the NFL. And that brings us to this story right here, which is a fucking monster story that, we could do an entire show on just this. The NCAA, according to ESPN, the NCAA and its 5 power conferences have agreed to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in the 100-plus year history of college sports. The NCAA and its leagues are moving forward with a multi-billion-dollar agreement to settle 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The NCAA will pay more than $2.7 billion in damages over the last 10 years to past and current athletes, according to ESPN. Sources said the parties have agreed to a revenue-sharing plan allowing each school to share up to roughly $20 million per year with its athletes. The NCAA Board of Governors and leaders from the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, Pac-12 all voted to accept the general terms laid out by a 13-page document. Notre Dame also agreed to the settlement as a member of the ACC. And I will get into a quote from Notre Dame's president here. Larry, we are on the precipice of there's no more pretending that college football is anything other than professional football. And it's going to be very, very hard for these teams to deny employment status to their student athletes that they have playing the premier revenue sports. If you've got a $20 million budget per athletic department, I mean, how long are we away from saying just the football team's budget is $20 million? Are you telling me that you got $10 million to spend on your football team, $10 million to spend on your basketball team? Like how I don't know how it all gets divvied up. At what point do, Title IX implications get into how things get whacked up and divvied up amongst the women's side of the athletic department? I mean, these are some unprecedented machinations that college athletics is going to be going through that no one could have ever foreseen. No one could have ever said, yeah, colleges will directly be playing. Like Ohio State's salary cap this year is, and that's where we're going.
Well, I mean, we've been there. It's just that we haven't been playing. They haven't been paying the labor. I mean, it's like, this is big business, and it's been unsightly. I mean, the ADs are making millions. The chancellors are making tons. The university are using these athletes to sign all kinds of multi-million-dollar agreements, and it's big business, except for the labor. The labor in this situation, the players were not being compensated, and it was always like we can't do that. It's just too complicated, and it's this and that. No, it's not too complicated. You just didn't want to. You wanted to.
Right, it's a lot easier. It's an awful lot easier to make a lot of money as an athletic department when no one's getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to not have to divvy up this massive revenue pie. But in the sense of fairness, we've known that this is where it's going, and this is big business, and always has been. So, and it's become big, big, big business. College football is the second fastest growing sport in America. It's a huge pie. And the players ought to have a cut of it. And the NIL was nice, but that's just a little stipend. Now it's time for the universities who are making huge money and oftentimes looking the other way, ignoring all kinds of improprieties to keep that revenue rolling in. Well, now they're going to have to share it with the guys who actually people are tuning in to watch. So I'm glad to see it. It does change the dynamic. It changes things about it. And not all of the changes are for the better as far as the viewing public is concerned, but it's the right thing to do.
And they used to duck behind the people would be less interested if these athletes were getting paid. People will be tuning away from this sport in the name of what? Academic excellence? Like whoever bought that bill of goods that was being sold. Remember, just the word, we do it this way because of tradition. Like tradition is a lousy excuse to put in front of the reason why you're not evolving with modern times. Tradition is great in some circumstances, and in other circumstances, it's just getting in the way of progress. And the NCAA is not what it was 30 years ago. The NCAA prints its own money and wants to keep it all for itself. And it wasn't quite like that 30 years ago. I mean, to get into an Indiana football game, I mean, the worst college football game you could buy a ticket to. Are you going to lose today? Yes. Will it even be fun? No. How much is that ticket? It's $11. All right, fuck it. I'll go. You can't get to watch the worst college football team in America for anything less than like $45, $55 these days. And that's just the way it goes. Although look out this year. Coach Signetti. The Hoosiers are coming, Larry. But anyway.
But no, there's also, the college football video games back, and they figured out some way to I mean, if you're going to make money in a business off of the players, you're going to have to throw them, you have to give them some seat at the table.
Yeah.
It's 2024. So it's just the way it is. And it's probably, if they're worth the money, they're worth the money. If they're not worth the money, they're not worth the money. The Title IX thing, you can go shove that. If they're, don't tell me I've got to spend this X amount of dollars on women's sports. If it doesn't justify the expenditure, they shouldn't get paid. If they're not driving revenue, they shouldn't get paid. If they are driving revenue, they should get paid. It's like they should be tied to the revenue, they shouldn't be forced. We shouldn't be forced to pay them some percentage because it's fairness. It should be about, you're not getting paid because of fairness. You're getting paid because of value, and your value in the marketplace is what your sport produces revenue wise, and you ought to get some percentage of that, not something that's related to whatever the men are making. I mean, that's just crazy.
The starting center of your college basketball team that goes to the Final Four, there is a dollar amount that can be put on that. I mean, look at how much money you make in a Final Four appearance, and one guy can be the difference in you're in it or not. So there is an intrinsic dollar amount that can be attached to a player performance in a big postseason tournament that goes directly into the school's pocket. I don't know what dollar amount gets attached to the starting center of a woman's field hockey team. I mean, I'm sure that they contend the field hockey championship every year. I've never seen it. I've never had anybody ask me about it.
It really, and it's like we know where it's operating on a lower scale, and all I'm saying is pay them commensurate with what they produce. If they, that don't pay them, some negotiated percentage of what the men make, all in the name of fairness. I mean, that fairness is you get a cut of what you produce, and that's where it should be. Not in any way. These are two different revenue pies. For every Caitlin Clark, who drives incredible revenue, there's other sports that don't. And it's like, if your sport doesn't drive revenue, you don't deserve the revenue. If your sport does, then you do.
Notre Dame President John Jenkins, quote, "The settlement, though undesirable in many respects and promising only temporary stability, is necessary to avoid what would have been the bankruptcy of college athletics. To save the great American institution of college sports, Congress must pass legislation that will preempt the current patchwork of state laws establish that our athletes are not employees but students seeking college degrees, and will provide protection from further antitrust lawsuits." This dude is living in a dream world, because the students are going to say that they're employees. They will unionize. They will demand, and they should. They really should. They really should. You can't make the argument that the vehicle that drives tens of millions of dollars of revenue that we're paying now students to be part of that vehicle are not team. You are bringing in a starting quarterback to raise the profile of your university in the same way you're bringing in an academic to lead your math department to raise your profile of your university.
I'm just glad I don't have to be the one who has to figure out
selling tickets.
I'm glad I don't have to figure out who gets what, because I mean, what a cluster. Everybody's a free agent. I played for Wisconsin last year. I'm playing for Louisville this year. I led Wisconsin to a Final Four, but now I'm playing for, Kentucky. And, do I get paid for the championship or the Final Four that I led my team to last year? Or is that money tied to the program? Does it go with the individuals?
Larry,
now you've got mass spread transfers. The transfer portal has changed the dynamic of college sports. I mean, it's just like, I'm glad I don't have to be the one who determines who gets what.
Well, and isn't it sad that the NCAA has basically abdicated any real, power over this? Like the NCAA is turning to Congress saying, you get us out of it. No, you should have been the governing body that, took the temperature of the changing dynamics of the sport that you were presiding over and done something about it. So the NCAA is totally an absentee leader in all of this when you're supposed to be the governing body of all of it. And now you're looking for another governing body.
Where's Sepp Blatter when you need him? Huh?
Where's freaking Sepp when you need him? The other element to all this is students, you know what? Also, in a weird way, be careful what you ask for, because if you are identified as an employee of a university, I don't think you're getting tenure, which means you can be fired, right? I mean, the definition of an employee is you are here to be paid, and if we don't want you here anymore, we will stop paying you and you go away. So there's an element of that sort of blowing up on students. And, at what point do you say, okay, so we're bringing this kid who was a McDonald's All-American in, and he is going to be our starting point guard. But you know what? He's not hurt, but he's a bum. He absolutely stinks. He isn't delivering anything on his promise. The kid who was the backup behind him, who's a 3-star guy, is going to be our starting point guard, not the kid who's a McDonald's All-American after all. And we don't want you anymore. And you're out. What happens then? So,
well, I mean, I look at the list every year for the NFL draft. That one of the draft guides produces, what is each prospect, a 3-star, a 4-star, a 5-star. And it's so common that the 3-stars outperform the 5-stars that it just kind of shows that the people who are ranking these high school players are not very skilled at doing it. And so it's like almost just kind of like a suggestion. It's like, what's the difference between a 3-star and a 5-star? It's nothing really. It's just kind of like an opening suggestion of how these guys are ranked, because there's all kinds of no-star guys that wind up in the NFL draft, and there's all kinds of 5-star guys that crap out. So it just kind of shows when you're evaluating high school kids, they're so young and they're so in their process of developing that it's hardly just like, the 5-stars are better than the 4-stars who are better than the 3-stars generally, but definitely not always. And there's all kinds of no-star recruits that wind up making it in the NFL. So I'm a little uncomfortable paying these guys based on these, Rivals says, yeah, but Rivals is wrong all the time.
Right. And hey, go ahead and look into the history of any of these recruit evaluation services.
It's usually some kind of money grab along the way.
Well, beyond that too, it's usually like some local high school kid who was just really interested and started doing it and just started compiling names and assigning stars. And it's not nearly as mathematical. And, there aren't
It's not
real,
empirical data.
right. There are not real scouts putting their eyeballs and walking away as, a 22-year-old NFL scout says this 14-year-old's about to be a 5-star.
Well, and it's also very much impacted by finances. It's like, well, how do you know this guy's a 5-star? Well, he showed up at the Nike 5-star camp. Okay, but how much did it cost to go to the Nike 5-star camp? Oh, $2,500. Okay, well, what about the kid that couldn't afford to go to the Nike 5-star camp? Now he's not as high on the rivals list, but he could be a better athlete. But his mom and dad just couldn't afford to pay for him to go to the rivals 5-star summer camp and travel there and stay there. And
jam.
It's become a combination of, like, if you have money, you can kind of fuel your kids' rise through at least high school and maybe into college as far as amateur athletics. And it's just kind of, I think a lot of those, it's like a lot of those guys. And also it comes down to, like, where are you from? If you're in an urban setting, you're going to be found. But if you're, out in the middle of the boonies somewhere, odds are they're not going to find you. And so, I mean, the whole thing is just, it's just, as I said, it's a suggestion. It's not the rule as far as who's good and who's not good. It means very little when you really look at, the draft 4 years later and you see how many guys go in the first round that were like 3-stars or 2-star recruits. It's like the star system is not ironclad in any way. No,
definitely not. Again, it's really hard to evaluate any high school student athlete or just kid. You're a kid. You're a kid. What really interests you when you're 14 years old, by the time you're 15, you got a girlfriend, you get into some band, and that's it. You don't care about sports nearly as much as you used to, and things change. There's
powerhouse programs, just like the same way we make the same mistakes with the Georgia and Alabama and LSU players, because every year Bama's going to have great players. So it's like Bama's going to be great. And it's like, well, how many of their guys are great? And how, truly great, or how many are just good and they're on a team with a bunch of great guys, so they look great. Right. So there's also that. I mean, it's like, and every year there's super highly rated guys from Georgia, LSU, Alabama that really just, they're just all right. They don't really make it in the pros.
Bryce Young
is a classic example right now, but I mean, like, like even Milroe for Bama, like he's going to be rated as like one of the hot quarterbacks. And it's largely because he's going to play at Bama. He's going to win a ton of games, but is he really going to be a top tier NFL quarterback? Maybe, maybe not.
Right. And then you got some kid who's like, cooking it up at Iowa State with not nearly as much talent around him as they got on that Crimson Tide sideline, but he gets overlooked because it's easy to overlook Brock Purdy at Iowa State. So,
I mean, when I'm looking at the preseason All-American lists and I see some awesome player from some relatively small school, I'm pretty sure that awesome player is pretty awesome. Otherwise, he wouldn't even made the list. But then there'll be Ohio State will have guys, Michigan will have guys. And it's like, well, you got to investigate those guys even more, because in some ways they're just the latest in the long lineage of, top recruits coming out of that school. But there's an assumption that they're going to be great. To me, it seems like that's where you really make mistakes in the draft, is when you start assuming that every blue chip guy coming out of these top 5 programs is legit. And in reality, they may not be.
Right. So I used to say draft Duke players at your own risk, right?
And hoops, I mean?
Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Hoops.
I'll say this, in the draft coming up, I kind of like the Duke combo of Jared McClain and Filipowski, but there's a lot of people that think they're pretty ordinary. But you know what? They're both going to go probably in the 20s in the NBA draft in June.
Larry, just to, acknowledge something decent while it's happening, enjoy it while you can. The San Francisco Giants are putting together some decent baseball games. A couple of real come-from-behind wins against Pittsburgh. It feels like the call-ups of Matos, Luciano, and Ramos have really changed the temperature of that clubhouse. They got Kyle Harrison looking to get the Giants back to 500 against the New York Mets a little bit later today. Good start from Kyle Harrison. That could happen. So better baseball and watchable baseball being played by the San Francisco Giants. Unfortunately, this all comes in the same week. We learned that Jung-Hoo Lee isn't going to take another at-bat this year. He's done for the year. But there is a little bit more hope of decent baseball materializing this summer, just based on the last 2 weeks of at-bats that we've seen from the young guys. Things change quickly sometimes. And I don't even know if Farhan can take any credit for it, because I don't know if a single one of these young guys is up but for injuries, but whatever. They're here and they're producing, and Matt Chapman is on one right now, and Estrada's playing well right now, and this is the best the Giants have looked all year, just the last couple of weeks.
I mean, the last couple of days, they've overcome 5-run deficits. I mean, they couldn't do that. I mean, we're not even talking about something. We're talking about something that's a major recent development. We're talking about like the last 10 days. The Giants have looked really good. Why? Because Luciano's better than Nick Ahmed, and Luis Matos is better than Jung-Hoo Lee, and Elliot Ramos is better than Austin Slater, and I mean that's really what's happening. Those guys all have bat speed and foot speed and talent. Matos is playing the hell out of the game right now. I mean, he looks awesome. He's hitting the ball. Ramos hitting home runs, bat speed, arm strength. I mean, when Slater comes back, if the Giants put Slater back on the roster and send down Ramos, Farhan should be fired that minute. I mean, that's just, it's, and as far as Luciano was only hitting like 219 in the minors, but he's getting an opportunity at the major league level. He's not the best fielder, but play him innings 1 through 7 and play Nick Ahmed in the 8th and 9th. I mean, as simple as that. But yeah, they've got big time talent. Lamont Wade's having a good year. Chapman's now, when Chapman is swinging it the way he's swinging it right now, he looks like the best player in baseball, because he's such a great defensive player that when he's swinging it, you're like, wow, this guy can do it all. This guy's amazing. So there's talk this week that the Blue Jays are going to shop Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and that the Giants are one of the teams that's showing interest, and a lot of talk about this kid Eldridge, who's got a 13 or 14 game hitting streak in the Cal League right now in San Jose, being the key cog, maybe going back to Toronto. But I personally think that Farhan, if he was smart, he would make that kind of a trade. The Giants have a high failure rate on many of their prospects. This kid's in the Cal League. If Eldridge is ever going to be anything, it's going to be in like 2027. If Farhan waits to 2027, he's probably not going to be the GM. He needs to get to the playoffs right away. And if you could trade Eldridge for Vladdy Jr. and put Lamont Wade in a corner outfield spot, since you lost Jung-Hoo, you're down an outfielder. The Giants look good right now. And they're going to get Cobb and Ray back in the middle of the year. They're going to get guys like Wynn and Hicks and move them to the pen. They're going to have a really deep bullpen.
Shows up and gives you some quality starts, something could happen.
Blake Snell. I mean, and then they should spend the next month and a half really going for it. And if they get to July 22nd or something like that, and it doesn't look like they're a playoff team, then shuffle the deck and trade all these guys. Trade Cobb, trade Ray, trade Snell, trade all your arms that other teams are going to want, your pending free agents, and try to get more prospects for 2025. But right now, it's funny how baseball is. To me, when a baseball team is not scoring, you can't watch it. It's like unwatchable. And when they are scoring, it's a joy to watch. Yeah. And right now the Giants are a joy to watch because they have athletes up and down their lineup. They've got guys who can hit now. I mean, suddenly it's like Ramos can put the charge in the ball. So can Luciano. So can Matos. Chapman's hot. And then you fill in with your Floreses and your Wades, and all of a sudden, Bailey, and they look good. They really look good. And they have enough pitching, I think. If you added one more premier bat like a Vladdy Guerrero Jr., and this would probably be the right time. You add him, you move Lamont to right or left, And you could wind up scoring 5-6 runs a game and
Well, and again, you
get
know,
that playoff spot.
you got a designated hitter. I mean, there's a world of options in getting guys in and out of lineups that just didn't exist before. So, yeah, it's time for them to, either determine we got the goods to go for it, so we're going to make a move that helps us, or not this year, and really, start looking at 2027 as that's the year that matters. But yeah, they got to get off they got to get off their AJ Pollock line of thinking where they're doing the bare minimum to improve the team. The argument could be made that you made the team worse the minute you put them on it. But yeah, look, no reason to till old bitter ground. Good couple weeks for the Giants. Good, maybe not even 10 days for the Giants. Good. I'm glad that success is being found without the word torture being used.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Well, I mean, and if you add one big bat to their lineup, then everybody starts to relax a little bit. But I love what I've seen out of Matos, Ramos, and Luciano, and there's no way I would send those guys down.
Did Dan Cochimilio come up with the Three Amigos? Are we giving him credit for that? Because that's a great nickname for that trio. It really is.
I don't know. I didn't hear him say that.
I thought it was Coach Emilio who came up with it, but I don't know. But Three Amigos, yeah, they've been really good in the little bit of time that we've seen them, and hopefully they keep it up. And there you go, Larry. There you go. I've got unfortunately Ozzy homesick today. Jillian is having a work at home day right now, but it's not one of those California work at home days. She's actually got some meetings and work to do at home. So I'm going to have a shorter than expected show at 11 o'clock. Let's see, over the weekend, I think I'm doing something with Damon Amendolara, and we're going to continue to promote the fact that we're going to be on Line 51 Brewery over in Oakland on June 7th, getting ready for the reverse boycott that Oakland A's fans are going to be doing one more time. So that's Sunday, but we're going to get away for a little bit on Memorial Day. Maybe I'll take Memorial Day off. I don't know. We'll just see how it plays. I know the kids will be home from school on Memorial Day. So if Jillian says you don't do a show today because we got two kids at home, there you go. She's the new program director at that point. But we'll see. I hope everybody has a great Memorial Day. I hope you pack up the Miata and get to go somewhere very nice. The number one tourist destination this Memorial Day is Las Vegas. If you've got any last minute plans, don't go to Las Vegas, because apparently that's where everybody else in America is going. So wrong weekend to go to Las Vegas. Kind of like the same way the Mardi Gras is the wrong weekend to go to New Orleans. It's when every
barbecue, go to the beach,
enjoy
the family, get outside. I'll be doing a little baseball tournament in Rodeo this weekend for my 14-year-old who's an all-star. I also want to say before we get out of here, today is the final high school day for my third child, Benjamin. Final day of high school is today.
Wow.
High school went by in the blink of an eye. This is a kid who didn't have his freshman year because of COVID. And so it's really almost been like a 3-year deal instead of a 4-year deal. But final day of high school for Benjamin Krueger today. Love him. He's a great kid.
Congrats, Ben.
Good baseball player and a better kid. And he's got a bright future. He's a great kid.
Has he done his college tours? Is he going on to college? What's the next step for him after high school?
He's gonna, he got into Colorado State, Sac State, Chico, a number of different places. He wanted to go to maybe Cal Poly, didn't get in there. But he's decided that he's going to go the JC route for a couple of years and then transfer to the school that he wants to go to. So he'll be going to DVC for 2 years, and then maybe UCLA, maybe Cal Poly, maybe, we'll see what he really wants. But yeah, he's made the decision that even though he got into some 4 years, he didn't get into the spots he wanted to go. And so he's going to do the JC for 2 years.
Let me tell you, you know what that is? It's a sign of maturity, man. If you do not get the place where you're like, I want to go there for 4 years, absolutely get your first year of college out of the way at a reasonable price point and then transfer back in. That's a smart move, Larry. That's a smart move for him.
Well, there's a lot of, people ask you a lot of times, they'll say, hey, where'd you go to college? And people always say where they graduated from. They don't say.
No one's talking about your freshman year. Where'd you start?
Yeah, well, I started at De Anza, but then and it's easier to get into. Would you rather say, hey, I graduated from Sac State like I did, or would you rather say I graduated from Cal Poly or UCLA or something like that?
Think about Aaron Rodgers. He's the only one who continues to bring up Butte because he had a problem with Cal. Like Aaron Rodgers finds a problem with everything he touches in his life. But Aaron Rodgers from Cal, no one brings up Butte except for him.
Yeah, no, and it's a lot. He's doing me a favor because it's still definitely cheaper.
Oh yeah,
to go do your undergraduate, your lower division electives and all those classes that you got to take your first and second year.
Right,
Math you can take them at the JC.
That can be taught anywhere.
Yeah, so we're happy for him. He's a great kid, and he's got a bright future. I'm not sure he may want to be a fireman. We're not really sure exactly what he wants to do. So I told him, hey, that's the beauty of things. You can do it at your own rate. So he will be going to DVC in the fall.
There was Jerry Seinfeld gave the commencement speech at Duke this year, and he had some really good advice. He had some really interesting things to say, and one of the things he said was, if you are sitting here today and you don't know exactly what you want to do still, and you don't have your job of your dreams lined up, congratulations. You are the luckiest person, and you are winning this commencement in ways that people think that their lives are just, set up for them already, and they just got to go through the motions, dude. Like, you're about to go and explore what you really like for the first time in your life. And you shouldn't ever take a job because of the money that it will pay you. You should take a job because of how much you like doing it. And he went on and made the point, like, the whole, you'll never, ever regret, or you'll never care deeply about all the days that you worked. He's like, well, that sucks. That's the wrong thing. You should love what you do in life, and you should have a job that you care about and rewards you in ways that are just far beyond financial compensation. Do something that mentally stimulates you. And if you, in the name of, I have to have my path cleared for me and I need to know where I'm going going to go do something that will be financially rewarding, but not mentally stimulating, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. That's not what life is about. So good for Benjamin. The fact that he wants to be a firefighter, a buddy of mine's dad was a firefighter, and just what an awesome, noble profession that is. That's some big boy stuff right there. So,
it's cool too. He's at, the end of senior year. I saw him yesterday, and and I'm like, hey, so what do you got going today? He's like, oh, well, I'm off school and this and that. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do today? He's like, yeah, I think me and my buddies, we're going to go golfing. And I'm like, great. Here are my clubs. Here's, don't destroy my clubs. Don't leave my clubs on the the fringe. So a lot of people lose clubs, but enjoy yourself. So he's in that that great age of life, 17, 18.
Right.
You're hanging with your buddies. You're going out with girls. You're going out to movies. You're going to parties. You're golfing with your buddies. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like
nothing seriously is happening in your life yet. As long as you don't get arrested, there's nothing that's going to be scored against you that is on your permanent record. You're still like, it's the last year of, you're still a kid. Enjoy it. You're still a kid.
He's the kind of kid that can have a full dinner at 6 o'clock at night, have a gigantic bowl of ice cream at midnight, and have a 6-pack in the morning.
Right. Wake up hungry still.
And, if I did that, I'd probably have a cardiac arrest in the middle of the night. You wouldn't, somebody else would have to take over the Krueger show. But for him, ice cream at midnight, 6-pack in the morning, the kid can eat and eat and eat. I look at him. It's amazing.
I got to get the views up on my channel just from a straight up, I got to buy these kids food Prism Malone. Oh my God. Like my 4-year-old
Seriously.
is starting to eat like a truck driver.
Oh, wait till they get big. I mean, it's
yeah.
I spend huge money at Costco. I mean, I literally, when I walk into Costco, they're like, the man is here. A man who's going to drop, almost $1,000 has just walked in to Costco.
Larry Krueger's here, everybody. On deck, Larry Krueger. He's got a lot of growing boys. This is going to be a big Costco run. Brace yourselves, everybody. Larry's in the room.
Seriously, Larry's in the room, everybody. He's going to spend 13 minutes in the cold chamber at Costco picking out mushrooms, fruits, and vegetables.
I remember, so Fortenbaugh, when Joe Fortenbaugh was out here, Joe and I are good friends, and my wife and his wife definitely took a quick liking to each other. So getting the families together, and we both had young kids at the same time. His kid's a couple more years down the road. I got a 4.5 and 2.5. Joe's probably at 6.5, 3.5 with his boys, and two boys, just like we got 2 boys. And Fortenbaugh, I'm like, so give me some tips. Give me some tips here. You're a dad. I'm a new dad. What do I need to know? And the only thing Joe ever offered up as a tip was save your money because you're going to have $1,000 a month berry habit. He's like, we spend more money on raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries than I ever thought humanly possible. He's like, we have an $800 to $1,000 a month berry habit between my 2 kids who are under the age of 6. And I'm like, geez, it's like cocaine. He's like, that's what this is. Berries are cocaine to children. They can't get enough of them. Seriously. And he's like, and you want to give them that because it's good. You don't want to be eating Skittles, so berries, you want to encourage the berries, but there is a price point on these freaking berries that's stifling.
Oh my God. And bread. I mean, we go through, loaves and loaves of bread. My wife would be like, yeah, get 2 packages of Dave's Killer Bread, and then make sure you get 2 packages of sourdough. And it's like, I mean, what the heck? Are we making sandwiches for for an army over here? But yeah, these kids, they eat and they eat and they eat some more. So.
Well, bring them to a meat cheese. That's all I'm going to tell you, everybody.
You got to get the lemon pepper wings. They get the atomic. They're spicy, but they're the only ones that get too spicy, But you don't want them not spicy enough. I don't know if I can go atomic, but I go spicy. Tom likes it. I like it. Tate likes it. We all love it.
Larry, you got a football eye right now. You're not a football guy, but you got a football eye. It looks a little beat up, a little ragged there, Larry. So why don't you go rest this Memorial Day weekend?
It's funny, Lar. I'm looking at that eyeball and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This guy's probably torn his ACL a few times.